Welcome in as we dive into everything people, power, and politics in a hectic election year. I'm Roop Raj. Thanks for staying up with us. We know it, trying to sort through what you see on one network versus another, podcasts, social media, to try to get all your political news. It can be a lot. So we made this show as a place where you can come to every night to get all of your politics in just 1/2 hour, minus the bias and with the fact-checking. So let's get to it. Vice President Kamala Harris finally sitting down for an interview tomorrow for the first time since she took over the ticket. That's something that she's been criticized for not doing. We'll give you the inside scoop of what she's expected to do and where she's going to do it. And speaking of the VP, we don't often see a sitting vice president run for president. But do you know how rare it is for a sitting vice president to win the top job? You're going to dominate at trivia once you find out because of this show. Think it over, and we'll come back to that in just a second. But we begin tonight with social media. Most of you are probably on it. You don't often come across someone who doesn't use at least one of these platforms. And each election cycle, it seems like we see these platforms play a bigger role. And since this show is all about you, we hit the streets to get a pulse check on how big of an impact it has on each and every one of your votes during an election year. Take a look.
Social media is ruling the world, as we both know it. But as far as for the election and democratically, it's definitely going to play a very big part.
None at all. I'm not into social media.
You don't have any?
I don't like it at all.
Perfect. Thank you.
So many people, that's what they go to. They're not really focusing on the family dinner conversation. They're going on what the social media is talking. But it's going to be a toss-up.
And we're getting a lot of good feedback about social media, on social media. Tracy responded on X saying, "Zero impact. Policy has my vote." Gail is on the other side of the coin, though. She said on Facebook, "I know I'm not supposed to say this, but yes, social media does influence my vote more than ever right now. We have a madman running for president, and I'm tuning into the followers." And finally, Julie, I think I may have met her once or twice. That's my wife. She actually chimed in on my post today, and she said, "Social media makes me say, wait a minute, is that true? But in and of itself, it does not influence my vote." We'll get back into that conversation about social media in just a few moments here. But right now, we want to take a look at this. Vice President Harris has been criticized for not sitting down for an interview in so many weeks or holding a news conference since she took over the top of the Democratic ticket more than a month ago. But that will change tomorrow. She's going to sit down with CNN anchor Dana Bash along with her running mate Tim Walz tomorrow night in primetime. The interview is at 9 o'clock tomorrow and will happen in Savannah, Georgia. We'll have to wait and see if the interview helps or hurts her campaign. We'll have full coverage tomorrow night on The Pulse. But here's something you might not know about VP Harris's campaign. She's trying to do something that's only happened once in 188 years. You see, making her campaign possibly even more historic than we've mentioned before. We're taking a Pulse deep dive into this topic tonight. Since Martin Van Buren was elected back in, you remember this, back in 1836, yes, that long ago, only one sitting vice president has been elected to the top job. You know who that is? This guy, George H.W. Bush. Ronald Reagan's term was up when Bush Sr. ran in 1988, defeating Massachusetts Governor Michael Dukakis. He had a solid economy, easing Cold War tensions, oh yeah, and Reagan's backing as he made his bid. Now, these ones, not so much. Richard Nixon couldn't capitalize on then-President Dwight Eisenhower's popularity when he first ran in 1960. You see, they had a complicated relationship, and Nixon was reluctant to have Eisenhower out on the campaign trail with him. He lost to John F. Kennedy, but would eventually find success when he ran against this guy, Hubert Humphrey. Humphrey was Lyndon Johnson's vice president and made his own bid after Johnson decided not to run because of the war in Vietnam. And then here's one you might remember. We're talking about Al Gore. He was Bill Clinton's vice president, worked closely with him, but distanced himself because of the Monica Lewinsky scandal that was really heating up. Gore lost to George W. Bush in 2000, a historically close race decided by less than 1,000 votes in Florida. And if you're below the age of 1945. There's something called a hanging Chad. Your history books may tell you a little bit about that, but it was all about the Florida vote and the way they were measuring the votes and looking at each and every ballot. Very interesting times back then as well. The most fair comparison for Harris, though, is actually Humphrey. See, like LBJ, President Biden announced he's not seeking a new term less than a year before Election Day. And the DNC happened in Chicago both times, too. But even then, that's not an entirely fair comparison. And here's why. Harris actually united the party and got support very quickly. Where Humphrey was tied to Johnson's approach to the war, he faced some challenges from within his own party. As we've said, this is an election unlike any other, so all we can say is buckle up and stay tuned to the pulse each and every night. So the reason that interview Harris and Wallace are doing is happening in Georgia. They're on a bus tour of the Peach State. That's a battleground state President Biden took in 2020. Now, this is them landing in Savannah. They were supposed to visit the state earlier this month, but as you may remember, they had a tropical storm, Debbie. She had other plans. She ended up pushing this entire visit back. After getting off the plane, they actually dropped by a high school band practice. While Harris is in the Peach State, former President Donald Trump is coming back to the Great Lakes state tomorrow, right here at home, pretty close to the capital city. He'll be speaking at a steel plant in Potterville. That, by the way, is just west of Lansing. I remember covering the news back in the mid-90s out in Potterville when I was a young reporter out there. Also tomorrow, VP Harris's husband, Second Gentleman Doug Emhoff, will be in Michigan as well. He'll be speaking in Grand Rapids in what's billed as a campaign event. But details about what he'll do, where he'll go, all that stuff is yet to be released. We'll let you know. And the vice president herself will spend part of the Labor Day holiday right here in Detroit in the Motor City. The campaign confirming to us tonight that Harris will be in Detroit on Monday. We are still working to learn details about when and where this campaign event is happening. And as soon as we know, we'll keep you updated as well. But now to a major update on the attempted assassination of former President Donald Trump. An FBI official says the gunman scouted the internet for events held by both Trump and President Biden, but saw the Trump rally as, quote, a target of opportunity on that dark day in America. The senior official says the gunman's search history showed he was looking at a number of targets, and his planning was extensive. Investigators still don't know why the gunman did this. Trump's ear, as you know, was grazed, and a man attending the rally was killed before the Secret Service took down that shooter. That man was defending his own family as he heard the gunshots ring out. You know, from one high-profile case to another, the day after special counsel Jack Smith filed a new indictment in former President Trump's election interference case, new video is giving us a really good look at then House Speaker Nancy Pelosi, not long after the January 6th attack. So the clip you're about to see comes from documentary footage filmed by who? Nancy Pelosi's own daughter. It was recently turned over to Congress as part of Republicans' work to absolve Trump of any wrongdoing when it comes to the riot. Pelosi makes it clear she blames Trump for the insurrection.
Let me just say this. I think our focus has to be on the president. Let's not divert ourselves.
The new indictment comes after the Supreme Court's ruling on presidential immunity. That removes part of the old one accusing Trump of trying to use the DOJ to overturn his own election loss. But it keeps the part accusing Trump of taking part in a scheme to enlist false electors in battleground states to claim that Trump won. It also keeps allegations Trump and his allies exploited the attack at the Capitol on that day to delay the certification. Trump responded on Truth Social, claiming this case has all the problems of the old one and should be tossed out. Back now on The Pulse, diving into all things people, power, and politics, and diving deeper into social media's impact on the election. In the hot seat for us tonight, Michigan Rising Action Executive Director Abby Mitch with a conservative perspective, and social media specialist Ethan Lloyd, who actually worked on Hill Harper's campaign. We thank you both for staying up late with us tonight. It's good to see you both.
Good to see you too. Thank you.
So I want to talk about this. So we heard yesterday, just talking about social media in general. We'll get into the political stuff, but we heard Mark Zuckerberg of Facebook basically say that if I had to do it over again, I wouldn't have kind of caved in so much to the Biden administration, who had basically said, look, you got to watch what you print, watch what you publish. Do you think that's a good thing, Abby Mitch, about social media, that people like Zuckerberg are saying, hey, we just got to hold to our truth, even if it's publishing things that aren't necessarily helpful to people?
I think what in 2020 a lot of people, Mark Zuckerberg certainly included among them, forgot is that social media is a conversation platform. When you turn it into a one-way medium where you're delivering information only, you start to lose trust by your audience. You start to lose your credibility. It is not meant to be a news delivery platform. It's an information delivery platform. It's a community space, not unlike, you know, town halls of yore. And I think that 2020 was a major miscalculation to pretend that social media was news.
Okay, social media. I want to ask you, Ethan, is social media a source for news?
I think it is, but it really depends on the kind of news that you're looking for. I always tell people that social media is the digital manifestation of public interest. So if you want to know what the general population is thinking, look on social media. If you're looking for true information that you want to have that is fact-checked and correct, you might want to look for other sources. You might want to go directly to the source. So it can tell you what the general population is thinking. It can tell you the mood of our society. I wouldn't necessarily use it as a tool for information.
I often tell people all the time, you know, with what we do every day, they kind of equate like what they do on social media as what we do. They'll say, oh yeah, you know, I publish words onto a post. That doesn't make you a journalist. I have video of something, doesn't make you a videographer. It makes you a citizen who obviously is deeply invested in the community, who cares, but there's a tendency to think that everybody becomes an expert. How dangerous is that?
Well, I mean, it's definitely, well, it's a double-edged sword. It is dangerous to assign expert testimony to something that is said by an amateur. That is certainly a problem. But what is worse is when you suppress public discourse and the laboratory of ideas to only saying things you can prove is factually true. Ideas are messy. Ideas creep into territory that makes people uncomfortable. And when we start telling people that they can't have ideas that challenge and that make mistakes, we start to rip at the roots of our democracy. And it's something I'm proud of in this country, and I think, you know, that is part of the appeal of Donald Trump, particularly in 2016, is he struck people as a guy who was going to have a conversation in the public square, whether you liked it or not.
Well, it's interesting because speaking of Donald Trump, he was in Michigan. He talked about crime stats in the U.S. and he said that they were up by 43%, and he attributed it to Harris's administration. We fact-checked that, and then we had some people on social media come back and say to us, Roop, you know that half of local departments hide their crime stats. And I thought to myself, actually, no, we don't know that. And so when someone professes something to be true and they have people in their circle that trust them, that can be dangerous. And that's what I was challenging you with, that perhaps people should be a little more careful.
So, I'm very glad there are journalists doing their job, fact-checking what is said in the public space. However, I think what is being said about crime being on the rise is reflecting a public sentiment, is reflecting a real thing in the world. People, I mean, you can say chicken or egg, but you look at polling, people feel less safe. Police officers feel that their jobs are more stressful. Frankly, there are fewer people willing to do that job. We have a crime problem. The nature of that crime problem, probably something that takes a great deal of expertise and precision to get to. But that doesn't make the sentiment untrue.
That's a really good point. Taking someone's feelings about how they feel about the country and gauging that and allowing them to publish that on their social media pages, that should be a right that we all have. A little bit about Ethan, you actually worked on Hill Harper's campaign.
Yes.
Talk about messaging. How do you, as someone who's working on a campaign, try to figure out how to get that message out specifically to a direct audience and specifically a type of audience that you're trying to hit?
Absolutely. I think my experience being the social media manager for the city of Detroit really equipped me for being the social media director for Hill Harper. When I was at the city of Detroit, it was my main goal to capture the culture. You know, we're going to talk about trash pickup, we're going to talk about tax policy and things of that nature, but I want to talk about the fact that we all love Faygo. When we're sick, we drink Vernors.
Sure.
We all hurt ourselves on the slide. And when you connect with the culture, you're connecting with people on a people level instead of on a government level, and that's very important. So running that campaign, my goal was, how can I connect Michiganders with Hill Harper on a Michigan level? And I think we did a solid job of that.
And Abby, you seem like you're kind of agreeing with that.
Yeah, I think this is a place where we can really find some agreement. Is that medium is like hypersensitive to inauthenticity. People know when you are chasing a trend versus saying something that is relatable and true. I mean, there was a journalist, I think, who posted about white man tacos. Tim Walz made a comment about white people tacos, or no, walking tacos. That's what it was. Walking tacos. Guy got the name wrong. Got excoriated, totally ratioed on X for not knowing that in Minnesota, in the Great Lakes region, we call it a walking, Fritos in a bag with lettuce, a walking taco. So I think
which sounds delicious, by the way.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Can't argue that.
Take your East Coast nonsense elsewhere. But I think that it is a medium that relates to people on a human level. And honestly, to bring it back to national politics, I see Kamala Harris following a lot of trends. I don't see Donald Trump doing that, and I think it'll be very interesting, and I'm leaning towards Trump on this one for sure. I think it'll be very interesting to see whether chasing trends versus sticking to your message and sticking to who you are bears out.
What do you think about that? Do you think the Democrats in general are more apt to chase a trend than, let's say, the Republican candidate in this presidential race?
You know, this is very interesting because right now I think we are seeing a battle on social media. Who wants to be liked more and get more likes and more comments? To be completely honest with you, I think it's all about balance. So you do have to talk about policy. I think to connect with young people, you do have to do things like go on Aiden Ross's stream or things of that nature. So I think it is about balance. You do have to do some level of trend work to reach more people. But on a certain level, there are things that surpass trends, which is true messaging, connecting with people, being honest. So for Democrats specifically, I think what we need to focus more on is talking directly to the camera about the issues and what we want to do, because I think that's what the Republicans are doing right now.
And I think it's interesting that the Biden camp, before Harris took the ticket, actually hired someone who was like a TikTok social media manager for the campaign who could manage the message on that platform, because they know how important it is to get the younger voters out there. I do want to ask you about the tenor and the fervor that we see on social media. I don't think in our lifetime, and anyone who's watching right now, we've seen it at this fever pitch on our phones. Like, you can pick up your phone and pick up X and, just as you say, be screamed at about a taco in a Fritos bag, or you can be yelled at because you liked something that Donald Trump said. This is going to get worse before it gets better, do you think?
I think we're learning as a human civilization how to interact in a medium where we don't have to wait for conversational pauses or for someone to finish their sentence. We can just jump in without listening. I think we are learning as a society how to listen in this medium and respond appropriately, and it's pretty darn ugly. And I guess really, you know, I guess I'm sorry, but I got to give a shout out just to go back to something Ethan said about an event that Malachi Barrett at Bridge Detroit covered, Harris event. He spoke to supporters and asked, you know, what is it that you want to hear at this event? And they said, cost of living, cost of living, cost of living. He tweeted on X about the event. Not a single person representing the campaign talked about cost of living. And I think social media is a really great tool when used by journalists for showing this disconnect between our politicians and what they think is interesting and what people really want to hear.
Ethan, if you could give one piece of advice to a candidate, Republican or Democrat, about a better way to use social media, as someone who's an expert in this, what would you tell them to do?
Study the comment section. That's the best thing I can tell you. That is telling you directly, organically, what people think about whatever the post was. A lot of people focus on likes. A lot of people focus on views. But what they don't know is the algorithm favors high engagement, specifically comments. If I get somebody to leave a comment, they are staying on that app longer. That means that Facebook, Instagram, X can make money by showing you more ads because you're on the app longer. So study that engagement, because the more comments you get, the more views you get, and the more you'll know what people are actually saying about you.
Ethan and Abby, it's so good to have you on this conversation and having a civil discussion. Again, face to face, people say things, I think you pointed this out, that they wouldn't necessarily say if they were in person. And I think this is true. If you're in your car or you're on your phone, you scream on the top of your thing, you say anything you want. You go face to face and people kind of take a step back. So maybe we got to return to a little bit of that face to face. But it's so good to see both of you. Thank you both for joining us here tonight. Back now on The Pulse, looking at everything people, power, and politics from the D to D.C. You know, as both candidates make that final push for your vote 68 days before Election Day. You believe that? 68 days. They're making a lot of impressions. Some good, others not so much. Author Talmadge Boston, who wrote How the Best Did It, is here now to talk about how both VP Harris and former President Trump are or are not showing their leadership skills. Talmadge, good to see you. Thanks for joining us here today.
Glad to be on your show.
Well, glad to have you on. All right, leadership. First of all, how do you define that when you look at any political candidate who's running for office?
Well, it's somebody who's got vision, who's got follow through on that vision, who's got the interpersonal skills to bring people to follow him and want to adhere and support that vision. And it's a person of integrity whose words you can take to the bank. It's somebody who understands the business of governing whereby compromise is an essential element if you want to make government work, given that there's always going to be two sides.
Yeah, and so when you look at the Trump camp and you look at the Harris camp and you talk to anyone who's a fan of either of these candidates, everything that you just described seems like they're filling stadiums, they're filling their rallies, people trust them, and they like them. So in that regard, by this definition, would it be safe to say that both Harris and Trump are good leaders?
I think it'd be safe to say they're good leaders of their respective bases. That's something different from being a good leader for the entire country. Somebody who has the capacity to bring the country together, make government work. That's a totally different skill set. So they're both effective with their bases, but in terms of overall, in terms of what the great presidents did to bring the country together, to get people on the same page, to appeal to the better angels of their nature, no, these two candidates are not measuring up to that test for national leadership.
So when you take a look at someone like George W. Bush after 9/11, Barack Obama with some of his speech work that he did and his policy work, Bill Clinton, those are people that you would say did measure up, yes?
Well, in the modern era, since World War II, Franklin Roosevelt, Dwight Eisenhower, John F. Kennedy, and Ronald Reagan are the four great presidents. The others who you mentioned certainly had some skills. They had some good days and bad days. But in terms of having an effective long-term presidency, the last great president we've had is Ronald Reagan.
It's been a long time since then, according to the definition of leadership in your book and from what you've studied, that we've had good leadership in our country. What do both of these candidates, we'll take Trump first and then Harris, what do they need to do to kind of seal the deal in terms of that leadership gap? Beginning with Trump.
Well, Trump needs to stop all of these personal insults. This is an election that he can win if he will focus on the issues, if he'll focus on the glaring deficiencies of the Biden-Harris last 3.5 years, as opposed to just calling her names, demeaning her, challenging her race. That's going to be the key to whether he wins or not. As far as Vice President Harris goes, she needs to step up and take press conferences and take tough questions and show she's got the courage to face the national media in order for people to believe she has the courage to be commander-in-chief. Those are the two areas where I'm waiting between now and November to see which of them measures up.
Well, we're going to watch as well here on this program, and the whole country is watching very closely. Talmadge Boston, it's good to see you. Thanks so much for your time today on The Pulse. We appreciate you.
My pleasure. Glad to be on your show.
Well, that is The Pulse on this Wednesday night. Remember, you can always reach out to me via email or social media. My email is roop.raj@fox.com.